Hola amigos, amigas, bienvenidos. Welcome to La Punta in Callao. What a pleasure to have you today. We started with some very little technical problems, but I hope you are able to see me now and to hear me now. Please help me by telling me if you are able to see me and hear me. Well, see me not yet, but let me turn the camera. Let me flip the camera so you can see me. Hola, hola, hola a todos. Hello. Hola, I see a hi. Hola, Adi. Hello, hello. ¿Cómo estás? Thanks for coming today to La Punta with me. Thank you so much for joining this tour. We started close to the ocean, but seems that that location is not so good with the internet. Maybe it's a dead point for internet purposes. Hola, Tania, ¿cómo estás? Hello, amiga. Hola, hola. I hope you enjoyed today's tour. Sometimes the gods of the internet are friendlier than other days. Today we started a little bit, with a rough time with the internet, but I think everything is getting better as we are going a little bit farther away from the beach. So you can see here we are not so far away from the beach. We're going to see the beach at the end of this tour, so no worries. We are going to walk the streets of a tiny, tiny district located in a zone that is officially not Lima. As you probably know already, Lima is the capital of Peru. So geographically, the place where we are looks like we were inside Lima City, but no, we are in a separate zone called Callao. So I will tell you a bit of the history of Callao. We're going to visit this very, very pretty part of the country, and we're going to see lovely architecture today. So I really hope you enjoyed today's tour. Thank you so much to the kind people that are participating already in the chat. It really, makes me very happy to see some interaction. Hola, Adi again. Tanya, dear, thanks for coming. Hola, Sara. And well, let's begin with this beautiful adventure, this Saturday adventure in this part of the city that has history that dates back to the 19th century that we can see in architecture, but as well, we have history that unfortunately, we don't have architecture from that period, but we guys know every details about, the past of our city. So I will tell you the history of this part of the country from the pre-Hispanic period until the current times. Not before, of course, saying and wishing Tania a happy birthday. Tania is one of our Hago guys. Well, Hago is a platform that no longer exists, but we guys from all over the world met in that platform. And I know Tania, my friend from Russia, she has just celebrated her birthday. So let me wish you, my dear friend, a beautiful, beautiful birthday. So we are now in La Punta, and La Punta is characterized by its beautiful architecture that dates back to the beginnings of the 20th century. So most of the architecture we can see here and the history we can enjoy connected with the architecture of this zone will take us back to that period. De nada, Tania, de nada. So let's first of all understand the history of La Punta to understand the reason why this zone is so important historically. So first of all, in the time of the coming of the conquistadors, the Spanish conquistadors found already in the territory that nowadays is, for example, my city, Lima, and many other cities in the country, they found cities very well designed, very well organized. They found Incas and found also many different other societies that were very well adapted into the geography of the country. Most of the times when we think about the Incas, we think in the Andes, but also the Incas spread over the entire territory of Peru. So in Lima, the indigenous culture that was here at the time of the coming of the conquistadors was fully adapted to the life by the sea. They were excellent fishermen. They also worshipped deities that were connected with the ocean. Gods that were inspired, of course, in elements or animals of the ocean. And these people, they spread over the whole territory of the coast. Here in this part of the country, we had a community of people called the Piti Piti community. So that's the name of the people who used to live in this section. Of course, they are no longer here. Not even the descendants of the Piti Piti exist. And I will tell you the history, why they were swept away, why they disappeared completely from this part of the country. But we know of these people thanks to the accounts of chroniclers. One of these chroniclers is Bernabé Cobo. So he, in the early 17th century, mentions about the Piti Piti community. And how this community lived. Well, they had little huts, little houses, displayed in this part of the city, of the country. So, of course, now nothing of that architecture remains. Instead, we have some excellent examples of this sort of like a beach resort fashion. We're going also to board this theme, this topic of the beach resorts, and the beach resort in particular of La Punta, a little bit ahead in the tour. But just to give you an idea how pretty and also how old the architecture in this part is, right? So very quiet, by the way, a very quiet beach street. So we're going to continue also walking. Oh, hola Satyam, hola, hola, thanks for coming. So we're going to continue now with the history of this place, the evolution of this part. So the Piti Piti community eventually was relocated, seems, after the coming of the conquistadors. Most of the community, there was a community, a part of the community that remained here, and they were the ones who offer the fish to the Spanish, because these were excellent fishermen. Also, the Spaniards needed, of course, of the services of these people. So a part of this community remained in this section. Look at these pretty pictures of the bay of Callao, and also the cobblestone. We have lots of beaches in coast of the country that are rocky beaches, and the water here is very cold. The temperature of the water here is about 14 degrees Celsius, so making it quite cold. Just at the moment you get inside the water, you really feel the coldness. Surfers, they have to use wetsuits to deal with the coldness of the water, right? So this is how a regular summer day looks like in this part of the beach of Callao. And we can see also some other pretty views through the length of trained photographers whose pictures had been used recently to publicize also the beauty of this part of the country and promote it as a touristic destination, right? So, well, the Spanish came to this territory in the 16th century. It was the year 1535 when they occupied what nowadays is Lima City, and also what they did was creating right immediately a port, because they needed a port for multiple reasons, not just for the fish, not just for obtainance of products that they needed daily, also as a way to let's say a gate out of the country for gold and silver, also as a way to send safely precious metals to Spain. Peru has a really interesting and even complicated geography, and also the distance of our country to Spain, the location of Peru in the map of South America made it one of the most distant locations, most distant by royalties or territories in the America to the Spanish, to the King of Spain. So for the Spanish, obtaining products from Peru was necessary, was very important. But how they could obtain these products if they were not, like easily just taken, like for example, could be, let's say, Cartagena de Indias in Colombia. Well, you just take the sea, the Caribbean, and then eventually go to the Atlantic, and finally you go to the coast of Spain. For us, was very difficult because you had to take the products, sail them on the Pacific, then also reaching Panama, but nowadays is Panama, and then crossing all of these products to the other side of Panama, to finally put them again in ships, and send them to Spain. So it was, double the time, triple the strength, the energy used in moving products from here to Spain. So, but it was necessary to have access to the sea. Hola amigos, thank you so much to all my friends who are joining. Thank you so much for your participation. We are walking the quiet, very quiet streets of La Punta and observing some pretty houses. So we are going to also make a little let's say stop in the story, in the line of the story that I'm telling you about this district, because we are now in the colonial times. But just to jump for a moment to the a little bit more recent history, the time when this part of the city was used as a beach resort. So we have some other great examples of architecture from the 1910s, 1920s. Look at in the distance also some very cute European-inspired constructions, houses, which still are in use by many neighbors that are even descendants, direct descendants of the immigrants. We're going to talk about immigration as well, connected with this part of the country. Immigrants, in most of the cases, Italian immigrants who came to Peru in the 19th century. Some of them were able to make fortunes for themselves. They created fortunes connected also with the bonanza or the boom of the guano. Guano was a fertilizer made from the poop of seabirds, the excrement of seabirds, and it was exported to Europe, mainly to England, mainly to France, but also there were other countries that needed guano, Peruvian guano. So we made fortunes out of this material. And lots of people also came from different other parts of the world, not just from within Peru or from South America. We had lots of people who came during that time, that period, to make a fortune, and they made the fortunes so much, so big fortunes that they were able to escalate socially fast, rapidly, and they were also able to connect with the already rich elite of Peru. Hola Dieguito, hola amigos. Thanks for joining, by the way, and thank you so much for your visit to this pretty part of the country. We are in Callao, in La Punta. I cannot refer of La Punta as being part of Lima because we are not in Lima. Callao, since the 19th century, is a zone, a territory that is completely separated from Lima. It got its independence as a status also granted to this zone because of its heroic presence in many important events of our history, especially as a place for defense of the independence of Peru during the period of the independence, and also maintain our independence during the time of a conflict that we had with Spain in the year, let's say it was a time very important, by the way, 1866, the war or the Battle of May the 2nd, in which our country got into a sort of like attack and our independence in danger also. So Callao since then has been granted this important, let's say, autonomy. And La Punta, which is part of Callao, is of course, once again, as I said, separate from the capital. So look at this pretty architecture here. Some of these constructions could be called Tudor, some of them can be called French. So they are, some of them, very fusion, very mixed. We don't have just one style in most of them. They are eclectic constructions. So, well, Callao was the port of the Spanish Lima. So Lima, the capital of Peru, was given the status of a capital since the 16th century. The Spanish used this territory to control all of the dominions they had here in the so-called Viceroyalty of Peru. Well, Lima embellished beautifully also during that period, 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century. Then we have the time of the independence from Spain. And Callao, the port of Lima, was not just very important, it was also very rich, and because it was so valuable, it had to be walled. No? So Callao had a wall, a big wall, as well as downtown Lima. We had walls in this section. Where are the walls here? Well, we don't have, unfortunately, the walls anymore, the old historic walls of Callao. And the reason is because we had an earthquake. So we will talk about earthquakes now. We're going to talk about the history of the worst earthquake of our history, the Peruvian history, what recorded history. Because, as you can imagine, in the times of the Incas and pre-Inca societies, there was no sort of like similar recording systems as nowadays we have, especially the writing. So that's why we are not very sure of events of that intensity in the pre-Hispanic times. But in the year 1746, a terrible earthquake took place here in this territory, in what is Lima and Callao. But also that earthquake affected many other parts of the country, of course, along the coast in particular. It is estimated that that earthquake, because it happened in the 18th century, the Richter scale was not developed, but it's believed that that earthquake was 9 Richter scale. So imagine how strong that earthquake was, right? So that earthquake happened at nighttime. It was October 28th, 1746, known as one of the darkest days in our history. And all of this section where the Piti Piti, the old Piti Piti community used to live, the fishermen, the indigenous fishermen used to live, because they live in this section. And let's say a few kilometers away from here, there was a wall, right? The wall of the Spanish, let's say, port, right? So, well, the earthquake happened at 10:30 p.m. So everybody was asleep. Everybody was in their, houses, and nobody believed that that earthquake, that they felt, which was very strong, we'll bring something more later. Let me show you on this other side of the street just for your pictures. So look, these houses, we have some architectural treasures everywhere. But we continue walking because we're going to show you the best, which is at the end of our walking. So well, 30 minutes after the earthquake, so you know already it happened at 10:30 p.m. At around 11 p.m. at night, no, it was nighttime, dark. Everybody, like probably was feeling sort of like afraid, but maybe they felt that they were better in their houses or in the churches because people were looking for a spiritual comfort. So the churches that were still standing, became shelters for these people. Most people didn't run away from the city to the higher lands. They stay here. Well, a tsunami took place. And that tsunami must have been the most horrifying thing because they couldn't really see in the distance because it was at nighttime, there was no illumination as nowadays we have. So they didn't see how in the ocean, first of all, the water was, like retrieving, was moving farther and farther away from the coast in those, like minutes after the earthquake. Oh, look at this pretty house. It's really, really beautiful. This is the ranchos. That's the way how we call the houses from the period of the late 19th century and early 20th century of this style. Ranchos, the ranches. So the few people who were able to notice that the water in the shore was, like going away, they ran away from there. They couldn't really advise too many people because many of them were just in shelters. So people started to escape and they ran. Some of them, they went over the walls of the city, of Callao. They went over the walls. Some of them, they were able to run as fast as they could to higher lands. Well, at 11 p.m., a big tongue of water swallowed completely all this section. Some eyewitnesses mentioned that that big wave was at least 10 meters high. So let's say about the height of, could be that building probably. So some people say that they were like that the wave was way bigger, up to 30 meters high. So it's really impossible to know exactly because everybody was so afraid and shocked but by this tsunami that they have never seen something like that before. So basically the tsunami of 1746, swallowed completely all this section that nowadays we know as La Punta. That back then in the old days, was known as La Punta del Callao because its shape is like a point. So we're going to continue. We're going to see the ocean, but as I said before, at the very end of the tour. So but we are walking. That's something very curious, and let me also turn the camera, flip the camera over me. So behind me, just one block away, we have the ocean, right? And in front of me, like 3 blocks away, we have the ocean. So we are in a almost like a tongue of land that is coming from the continent, let's say, in direction to the ocean. So it's very, very interesting. So here we have a map also that we will show you about, hola, ¿qué tal? Gracias, about how this land looks. So let me also show you in the map, and I have also my model, Marek, Peruvian model. So he's helping me to hold the map. And look at this. So this is La Punta. This is the map of mainly metropolitan Lima, right? And Callao is basically this section over here. right? So it's a separated zone, it's a constitutional province, and is independent from Lima. So this is La Punta. Look at the peculiar shape it has. So when the earthquake happened and the tsunami swallowed all those sections, the water level increased down to here. We are here. So just to give you an idea how much disappeared for several hours, including some zones for days after the tsunami. Thank you, Marek. So now we're going to turn. We will continue walking in direction to the main plaza of La Punta. So La Punta is really not indigenous at all. We don't have any indigenous architecture here. We don't have colonial architecture here, but the reasons are evident. They are related with, the passing of the time, earthquakes, and the tsunami, especially the one that we talked about just a moment ago. So why this place is famous, why it became the most exclusive beach resort of Lima for a short period of time, honestly. It was a very short period of time in which the elite of Lima started to come in this direction for the summer, to have a relaxing time, and also to meet other rich, and to make probably business deals, but especially to get better, like to cure their diseases. In the 19th century, still we had the belief that you could get sick from the air, right? The air, there were good airs and bad airs. For example, if you had a person with a sickness in front of you and the air came, against you, so the disease of that person, you will be contagious immediately by that disease. You're going to absorb because of the air, because of the position of how the air blow, you will get the disease. So that was the type of concept people still had in the time when the first beach resorts of Lima, and this one in Callao, were created. So this district, as a district, was created in the year 1915. But it existed as a beach resort before. The last decades of the 19th century, it was a time in the history of Peru when we were sort of like recovering. It was a time of recovering from the War of the Pacific. We had a big time of bonanza or wealth in the country before the War of the Pacific. The war, Peru, Chile, Bolivia also, that happened or began in the year 1879 and finished in 1884. But before that time, Peru was living a time of wealth, a time of, like luxury. We received, like the fanciest products from Europe, and people could afford it. And guano, the let's say fertilizer from droppings from seabirds, allowed people to have a very luxurious lifestyle that they couldn't afford without the guano. Why we were so rich with the guano? Well, because we were the only country in this part of the world that produced guano. So that's why we had something nobody else had, so we could, make money from that as much as we wanted, to price it. People will pay for it, but that didn't last forever, right? We have here the main church of the district. As I said before, this is a district from the year established in the year 1915, but it has also, like still nowadays, a constant influx of people coming to the beach, especially in summer. So it still is, in a way, a beach resort. The firefighters, there's a station, and we're going also to see many houses on sale, by the way, if you wish to come and stay here, maybe rent or live. You already know, where you should be coming. So we have some interesting cases of architecture that I'll talk about in this moment. Also, going back to the time in which La Punta became this splendorous beach resort. It didn't last for long, unfortunately. Around the 1930s, it started to decay. The rich people were more interested in going farther away from the city center. And also, another problem is that we started to have migrants from the Andes, very poor people, which were squatting in zones quite close to this place. So before the squatting, the immigration, the migration of people from the Andes in the 1940s, Lima had lots of empty, like green zones, like fields, plantations everywhere. But later, after the 1940s, the people who started to come from the Andes, the migrants started to take those zones and they squatted, right? So I know very well that story because my family came also from the Andes later in the 70s. But it was the reason why I'm here. The reason why I'm here is because of my grandmother and grandfather coming to Lima looking for opportunities for us. So the houses you see here, in particular this one here, this is the Grace house, Casa Grace, right? These are houses that belong to immigrants, European immigrants. So let's talk about the immigration of Europeans, and in particular, the immigration that is the most important in terms of being the one that has left the biggest footprint in this district. And that is the Italian immigration. So many people from La Punta, we call them punteños. So someone from La Punta is a punteño. So many people from La Punta, they say they are descendants of Italians. Many of them from Genova, by the way, Italians from Genova. By the way, we used to have 4 pretty, very exclusive hotels in this section. And those hotels were the ones that were visited by those European immigrants who were in Lima because they were doing business, they were in the summertime, so they used to spend the summer here. One of those hotels used to be over there in this section, right? The Gran Hotel, for example. The Gran Hotel was the most exclusive, the most luxurious. So it was in that section. Nowadays it's gone. The hotels are gone all, but we have beautiful houses here. So now we're going in direction to see the ocean for the grand finale of our tour. So the Italian immigrants who enjoy very much the ocean life, the comfort of being in a tiny place that had, well, it was very quiet, very different than downtown Lima back in that time, beginnings of the 20th century. Decided to settle in this place. They decided to stay permanently here, and in a way to also create stronger bonds, connections with other Italians who also were coming, some of them maybe more recently than others that were already consolidated neighbors of Lima. Well, they started also to recreate festivities here, like for example the Venetian nights, Noches Venecianas, right, in which they could party, like the same way in Venice, like replicating the carnivals. And that's a tradition that was carried for a long time by the neighbors of this district. I have 2 very close friends to my heart, 2 of my dearest friends who are also descendants from Italians. And they also told me many stories of their family and the beautiful times also their moms and their uncles, aunties also enjoyed in this part of the country when it was still quite distant from the city center. So also where I'm dedicating this tour to my friends, who I think one of them at least is here, Diego. So they are really loved friends by me. So I didn't know much of La Punta when I grew up. was born in a different part of the city. So thanks to these friends, I learned about the past of this district, the behind the scenes of living here. And this also brings me to another interesting fact of La Punta district. Most of the neighbors of this district have been born in the district, and they are children of punteños, so they are children of neighbors. It is very unusual that newcomers come to this district. Number one, because it's distant from the city center, so you have to really love to live here to stay in this part of the city. And it's not really convenient in terms of distance. It's not convenient in terms of price also. It's quite expensive to live here. And well, it is the society here, the neighbors here are very, very close, very united. No? So they really like to know everybody that is here, which is really good, I think. So everybody knows each other, everybody says hi to each other. So well, that's why this part is so special. We just have 5,000 people living in La Punta, 5,000 people only. And look, they also have their own food fairs. Let me show you here this food festival. It is sort of like a farmer's market, I think you will call it. So it is usually organized on the weekends. All of this started during the pandemic of COVID-19, but it has stayed with us, which is something good because it's helping also neighbors to continue, like sharing their initiatives and businesses. We have here a monument dedicated to the ultimate hero of Peru, Miguel Grau. Miguel Grau Seminario is the Peruvian of the millennia, is how we call him, Peruano del Milenio, the most important hero of Peru, the most beloved and the most known hero, defender of Peru during the War of the Pacific. His remains are buried here in this zone in La Punta, in a military school. And on the distance, we can see finally the ocean. I would like to know if you are still able to see the ocean, like you have no interruption in the video. Please, amigos, I would love to know if there's no problem with the signal, so in that way we can stay here, or I can also go backwards if it's necessary. Just let me know if you can participate me of this, will be super. So we see in the distance 2 islands. Let's come to the end of this tour with the islands, the story of them. So we have 2 islands. Oh, good. Oh, gracias, Ana. Thanks for coming, amiga. I just saw you. Thank you, gracias. So we see here 2 islands. This one is called Fronton, and this other, the bigger one, is San Lorenzo. So La Punta is the only district that we have in this part of the city that is close to the islands. So the distance between here and the island, the tip of La Punta, the tip of the tip, La Punta means the tip, by the way, or the point, to the island San Lorenzo is 4 kilometers only. 4 kilometers, right? And the waves are pretty, right, Marilu? Very, very beautiful, very relaxing. So we have some curious things about these islands. Let me tell you a couple of things about them. First of all, let's begin with the small one. El Fronton used to be a prison. This was a prison, a high security prison, until the 80s. It's very tiny, it's just 1 square kilometer. And in both islands there's no sweet water. So even the sweet water had to be transported into the islands. So that prison was a high security one, as I said before. The world's most dangerous criminals were put there. With also some successful escapes from the island. Then we have the other one, San Lorenzo. Let me move a little bit over here to give you another perspective of San Lorenzo from a little bit, more in this location. So San Lorenzo is 8 kilometers long. So it's much longer, but it still is, just deep 1 kilometer, more or less. So this island used to be covered in guano, in poop from seabirds. Not the only case, of course. Most of our islands in the coast of Peru were all covered with guano back in the old days, until the time when guano became to be exploited in the 19th century, mid-19th century. So the islands have been visited by ancient Peruvians since the pre-Hispanic times. We have information of burials in these pre-Hispanic burials in this island. Also pirates. Pirates used to use the island as refuge. We had some pirates in the coast of Peru. For example, Jacques Lermite, a French pirate who came with his Dutch pirates, the men, to Peru to try to steal as much gold he could from the rich ports of the Viceroyalty of Peru. But, well, sadly for him, he died in Lima. It's not very clear why he died. It could be also, one information says, the bad quality of the water on board the ship. Also, another reason was gout, a disease. So, well, finally he was buried here in the island. But his tomb was burned by a Spanish. And also, yes, Marilu, we had we had pirates here. We had these men who were in some cases privateers. They were also working for the Queen back then, or the kings of England. But it was, a time of fights, between also those European crowns. And another interesting story to finish also this tour is that the islands were visited by very important men. We have, for example, the case of Antonio Raimondi, an Italian explorer who studied the flora that appears in the top of the island, which is quite elevated during the winter time. Also, we had Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt, the one who has given the name to the current. Also, we named the current Humboldt after him. He studied also the sea life in this territory and the guano, the poop of the seabirds, and even Charles Darwin. He was here also in that island. He was a young Darwin, of course, and he investigated also the sea life there. So, well, what an interesting also set of islands. And, well, with this location, of course, and this beautiful, like a part of the tour, at the tip of the tip, La Punta de la Punta, we are coming to an end of our event. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for joining this tour. It's been also challenging to begin it because the internet was not so friendly with me in the beginning. But we catch up also the few minutes that we couldn't, begin with, at the end of this tour. So that's why we are taking also a little longer to finish. Muchas gracias. If you would like to support this tour, you can do it also by commenting, by sharing, by telling your friends about it. Your Lima City tour guide about this channel. You can also, if you wish, donate. We have let's say pin in the chat a couple of methods to donate. Any amount is highly appreciated and welcome, and it helps a lot to continue creating products and tours and events. And also soon we're going to be having some museum tours which are going to be also available for you all here on YouTube Live. Take care, have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much for your participation, and to my colleagues who were here also, thank you so much. Thank you so much to my friends who are always visiting me. Muchas gracias. See you soon. Best to you all. Bye bye. Ciao, ciao.